Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. I'm delighted because I got my friends on this morning. Hey, Lauren Anderson and Nyzae James. Y'all know Lauren Anderson runs that little beautiful bookstore over there on Edgewood and Hotchkiss called Possible Futures. And Nyzae is by any means necessary traveling bookstore. So they have combined efforts, and we're going to learn something about the Black Panthers this month. We're going to learn something about Black Panthers starting the day into Black History Month. So tonight there is a virtual a gathering, a teaching, Revolution in Our Time, teaching and learning about the Black Panther Party. So Lauren and Nyzae, jump in and talk to me about what is happening. What is going on?
You want to break it down, Lauren?
What was that, Nye?
I said, you want to break it down? I got mine too.
I'll start us off, and then I'm gonna hand off to you. Yeah, Babz, you're holding up a beautiful book.
It really is beautiful,
right? It's spectacular. It's like a work of art and history and like a labor of love. So tonight is both like a kind of, in its way, like a standalone event with an author, Kekla Magoon, who wrote that amazing book you were just holding up, Revolution in Our Time, the Black Panther Party's Promise to the People. And if you can see it, you could see that it has like a whole bunch of medals on it. Like it was just honored by just about every medal it would be eligible for, including that it was like a National Book Award finalist. So she's going to be joining us to talk about the book tonight on Zoom from 6 to 7. It's a free event. It's sort of pitched towards educators broadly defined, because we are the co-sponsors of this particular event are the Bookstore, the Anti-Racist Teaching and Learning Collective, which is a group of teachers across the state of Connecticut who are working to bring ethnic studies teaching into high schools, and specifically to work on the implementation of the Black and Latinx studies course that every high school in the state is mandated to offer in the coming years. So it's that group of teachers, and then it's also just educators who work with young folks. And it's meant tonight to kind of put the Panthers in context, and also kick us off for this sort of longer project that is, a collaboration between Possible Futures, BAM Books, Elm City Lit Fest, Hartford's Lit, and some allies and friends to do something we're calling the Fred Hampton Project. Yes, right. So Fred Hampton's, what would have been his 75th birthday, is this year. August 30th. And so we're using this event tonight to kind of provide context for a series of events where folks can learn more about Fred Hampton's life and legacy, because I think we all feel like teaching about the Panthers is a crucial thing that isn't happening enough in our schools, like so much isn't happening that should. And also that so many people really don't learn anything about Fred Hampton and all that he accomplished in his very short
life. Yes.
Yeah. Of 21 of just 21 years. People know that he was assassinated, but oftentimes that's kind of all they know. And he was just a tremendous human whose legacy lives on in so many ways, and also can be something that young folks especially can draw on for inspiration, just given who he was and what he accomplished. Being such a young person himself. And so that's kind of the overview, but we're very excited, I think, about all the parts of it. And then just, it would be great if anyone watching wants to join tonight. They're welcome. We're going to do a book club around the book in February, and we can say more about all of that. Did I kind of capture it?
I think you did a good job.
Yeah, I think essentially everything.
I think it's a good job. I think there's a lot of backstory to a lot of this. I'm excited about Kekla coming because this kicks off this conversation, and I love this renewed interest right now that the Black Panther Party is enjoying. So it's necessary. I love that Fred Hampton is finally getting some light and some shine out here in these Black Panther streets, because we know so much about the other ones. We know so much about Bobby Seale. We know something about Eldridge Cleaver. We know something about all the other people, but Fred Hampton sort of wasn't that well known as a Panther. And he was charismatic, he was dynamic, I mean, he was like 20 years old. I mean, he was,
Yeah.
he was well read, he was well versed,
very articulate.
Very articulate. I hate saying that we are articulate because that just burns me up when.
Nah, but like he gets on stage.
But he was. He
him,
was fire. He was fire. And so our friend Andrew had no awareness of Fred Hampton. And then when he found out about Fred Hampton, he just was like, why aren't there books about, like he was genuinely outraged. Like, why aren't there more about him? And so the Fred Hampton project here is born out of his love and commitment to seeing this man be raised to his rightful place. So Nyzae, you got a book club coming to talk about, to get us ready for all of this.
Yeah.
How do we attack this book? I don't like to use warring words. How do we come to this book? How do we come at this book? How do we delve into this book as a book club?
Well, we're going to start just by, we're going to do the pickup on February 4th at Possible Futures. And I will be giving a Fred Hampton 101 just for information for new readers and people who don't know much about Fred or the Black Panther Party. And we're going to talk about the book, talk about the Panthers and their legacy, and hopefully new and younger people will gravitate towards that, and it'll be educational. And during that reading process, we're going to be doing book check-ins, and on the 25th, we'll meet up and discuss the book over at the Gather on State Street, and essentially just talk about the legacy the Panthers have left us and the work that they put in, and basically how we can pick up where they left off, and have a good time and enjoy each other's company, and
So when I was thinking about this earlier, when we are here talking about the Panthers, like this is Black history. This is like in your face Black history. But so many other states are not allowing for this kind of discussion, conversation, or awareness raising. And I don't want to say we're lucky in Connecticut because Connecticut has its own ills, right?
Yeah.
But when I think about a state like Florida, who is going out of its way to legislate Black history out and Black people out of its own history in that state. I mean, what do you think about that? And what do we say to Floridians?
That's very unfortunate. But at the same time, I realized that it's up to the people to educate themselves, which the Panthers were very much advocating for, self-sufficiency. And we just got to educate our people our own if need be.
So you're saying even if
it's important for this book club, I feel.
I like that.
I just want to say I totally agree with that. I mean, I was a teacher. I think I love teachers, good teachers who are working hard at their craft. I also think schools are just not, they're not the only places where, and sometimes they're not the primary places where like transformative learning happens, because they're messed up institutions that were created from jump really to strip people of their culture more than they were to like honor their cultural wealth. And so it makes sense to me in a lot of ways that like some of the deepest learning experiences young folks might have would happen, and kind of young folks of all ages, right? Like would happen
in a library,
right, outside of schools and in like intergenerational dialogue, in places that can kind of be like a third space, not school, not home, but like, gathering space. That's why it's really nice to also bring the conversation to Gather on State Street, because it's just moving it around the city. And I will say like about Florida, just shout out to Rod Ferguson. I don't know if anyone here knows Rod, but Rod is lives in our area, is a Black queer scholar at Yale, and was named in Florida's State Department documents as one of the dangerous forces that was being introduced to the curriculum. So needless to say, we all knew, those of us who know Rod know that Rod is like I always say like dangerously brilliant. Now, apparently all of Florida knows that if allowed to hear from like radical thinkers, young folks are not to be trifled with. You know, young folks want to get free. Not all young folks, but enough young folks. It's part of the reason why people go to schools first, to cut back on opportunities for like actually accurate learning about the history of activism and resistance, because young folks, that's like candy to them. You know, they want something different. And Ron DeSantis is terrified of that.
Oh, Ife wants to remind us that the full name is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, created to educate us on ourselves and defend our community, which is very powerful.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting in this conversation, with the backdrop of Florida and Texas and all these other states that are sort of anti-Black everything, that the way that librarians have become subversive and the resistance, that, you know, with this whole banned book thing, you know, books are being banned and librarians are centering these books front and center so that people can still have access to this information. So talk about educating your own communities. Librarians are really playing a critical role these days, as well as independent booksellers, I think, too, because they have the power to sort of put books out into the community that raise awareness around these kinds of things. So talk a little bit about what community can do to further develop these dialogues and conversations around our history of Black and Brown people and Indigenous people and people who historically have not been part of the telling of history. Any one of y'all can jump in.
Well, for me, I didn't learn about the Black Panther Party in school. I happened to stumble across the Black Panther Party Reconsidered at the library downtown New Haven. And from there, my mission for knowledge just became a journey. And I think it's important, like when you're on that journey, to, you know, embrace community and the people around you and make them a part of that journey and process. So
how old were you, Nyzae, when you made that revelation, when you made that discovery? And what happened? Like, what was that experience when you saw that book or you came across it? What were you like? Because I imagine that like the whole world just opened up.
I think I may have been about 13 or 14. And I was just completely shocked that none of this stuff was in the curriculum. I didn't know these names. I didn't know these faces. I wasn't familiar with the Black Panthers being a political party, them providing free breakfast programs, healthcare clinics. And it was sort of like I became outraged. You know, this was my history, our history, and it wasn't, you know, being told. And from there, I knew that I had to be a part of telling that history and getting other people to learn about that. So that's kind of why I wanted to start the Radical Thinking Book Club, just to bring people together collectively to have these difficult conversations and to educate them on all sorts of matters involving our society and the things that keep us marginalized and hinder the community, and ways to, you know, break free from those shackles and, you know, come up with ideas to better the community and, you know, just collective work, period, because that's when we get the most work done collectively.
Lauren?
I mean, I love working with Nyzae and Ife and Andrew and Nzima. And I do think, like, to your question about like what can community do, I just think it's like building relationships and also giving people multiple entry points. So one of the things that I really like appreciate is we, sort of the Fred Hampton project and this event, like it's actually like a bunch of different groups kind of working together, and we got to the whole of it by each bringing sort of different parts. And I think that's part of the way, you both build community, but you also build opportunities for learning. And even something like Nyzae and I geeked out a little bit together on this
Board.
chart.
You see the board?
on this
Oh,
whiteboard.
I love it. It's great. I took a
Babz,
picture
you
of
wrote
it.
on the board, right?
I
Yeah,
wrote on the board.
But part of what I do like love about it is I think people need to be invited in low stakes ways to like join and be part of a conversation and demonstrate that they want to learn. And it's just like a basic, just Post-its. It's like, what do you think you know about Fred Hampton? And like, what do you actually want to know? What questions do you have? And I think when you like create space for that, even something like the comments, right? So Ife jumping in and saying what people don't always say is that the full name is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Like that's actually a really important point that we only get if Ife is in the conversation and we have space for her to make that point and space for people to hear that point. And when we think about what's happening in the news right now, like the public mourning around like the incredible acts of violence by the police, there's a real reason why the Black Panther Party was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and why there are parts of the book that are about like the taking up of arms. And I think a lot of times teachers are afraid to kind of go there with young people, but young people are being cheated. And I think what Nyzae is saying is like sort of all of us at some point have gotten to a place where we're like, wow, these institutions that I'm told I'm supposed to trust have actually cheated me out of consciousness raising experiences and information. And that is purposeful. Right? There's a reason for it. And so trying to build spaces where, that institutional agenda just like isn't operating is really important. And hopefully people who participate in those spaces go back into the institutions. Like we're not going to get rid of schools anytime. And I don't want to. I think schools are really important. But schools might be improved upon by public education efforts that don't happen inside of schools, but that press schools to do better.
I like that idea. So what do you want people to take away from tonight, from the book club, from the Fred Hampton project? What do you want people to come with and take away with?
A good question. Nyzae, you want to?
I'm a professional question asker.
I know.
That's a good one, Babz.
We're getting worked.
Well, for me, I would just like to see people leave with a little piece of Fred in them. Everyone has that inside of them, consciously and subconsciously. So I think, everything that he stood for, everything that he was trying to accomplish are still very much important and needed today. And I think a lot of people recognize that. So I don't know. I'd like for people to give him not only his dues, but just to see the work that he was doing and, see what we can collectively do together to, create substantial change. And yeah,
I like that.
Just educating each other, learn from one another. What about you, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same, and also to kind of just I guess it's a little bit like what I was saying before about like to feel invited in a way into conversation, and also that like that there's like an ongoing space, and it's not like necessarily a physical space. Like it could be the bookstore, but it could also be like wherever the Radical Thinking Book Club moves to, and it could also just be like, I don't know, sitting out on a bench in conversation. That there are opportunities. I mean, it's that there are opportunities to learn together, and that you can both like join one, and you can also propose one and help to build one around something that is important to you. I hope people will also get the sense that like tonight's event is a really wonderful opportunity to meet this author, who I should also say, like, this is just a small slice of her other amazing books. And she has a new one that just came out like a few days ago, actually on last Tuesday. So, but to just know that there's, that books can be a physical thing that allow for a conversation to happen, and helping just like build community around books and in relationship to books. It's sort of like books are a vehicle for really good things to happen. And so let's gather.
I like that. Now, I believe there's a thing called the Fred Hampton bookcase. What is that? It's all the books he's ever read. I think it's the Fred Hampton apartment or Fred Hampton.
Oh, shoot. I never knew that.
Yes, Andrew told me about this, and I
Andrew?
wish he could. I wish he was on.
I know,
Andrew's
Andrew.
let me tell you something. He is all in. Let me tell you.
Oh, no,
But
you
he
know.
had mentioned to me that he wanted. It was like $200 or something, or some not outrageous, but it was a sum of money, and you could get all the books that Fred Hampton ever read. Like it's this whole
For $200?
I think it's like 200 or maybe a little
That's
bit
pretty
more,
good.
but it's a whole thing. I think it's called Fred Hampton's bookcase, or Fred Hampton's bookcase in his apartment, or some. It was some.
Oh, you know what, Babz? I wonder about that, because I don't know. We were talking about that amazing Carrie James Marshall painting that's almost like entirely black, and it's actually, you have to like look at it at kind of angles to see that it's Fred Hampton's bedroom. And I do wonder, it makes me think maybe it's like the shelf of books, because that would make sense perhaps more than all the books he's read in his life for $200, because that sounds like a good deal. Something tells me Fred Hampton read a lot of books.
Yeah.
He did. He read a lot of books, but I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. But Andrew, we have to get him to like tell it absolutely. But it was something to that effect, that you could have the reading. You could have all the books that Fred Hampton read that was in his apartment or whatever, or something to that effect. And I'm so sorry I can't pull it up the email that he sent me talking about this, and I was like, and I was trying to get him to buy. I was like, just buy them. Like,
I was gonna say, Babz, it's perfect, because now we get to say, y'all got to come to the book club.
that's it.
Right.
That's it.
That's
it.
If you want the final word on this bookshelf and many other things, you gotta come. You gotta come.
The title listing, you got to come to the book club.
Got it. Yes. And then you'll get it. So did either of you, and Nyzae, you may have seen the film, the Fred Hampton film. Did you see? I have not seen it. I know what it is, but I haven't seen it. I've been on the fence about it because I'm trying to.
It was a really good film. My only problem with it was that it focuses too much on William O'Neill rather than Fred, and the betrayal rather than shedding a light on Fred himself, his life, and the work he was doing. It's just, but it was a really good film.
Oh, Andrew sent a text. The books in Fred Hampton's, it's a short story. Short story. Is that what it is, Andrew? A short story? I thought it was a collection of books, or they give you the list of books or whatever, which would be really cool if you had that primer, right? Like if you could read all the books that he read. But he was a prolific he really was a reader, and he really was about the world too. Like, I think there was a shift in him about just being in neighborhood, and then the shift to a global thinking about Black people everywhere, right? Like, and all Black people were oppressed somewhere in the world.
And even then it became not just about Black people, but a whole class struggle,
Yeah. The Rainbow Coalition.
The Rainbow Coalition. Yeah.
Yes. The Rainbow, which is still in effect.
Terrifying. Yeah.
And also like that's also another one of these like very scary things to people. It's like, you got a Rainbow Coalition, you have a certain kind of numbers, that's the kind of Ron DeSantis be running somewhere. That's fine. He can go. The Rainbow Coalition is coming for you, Ron.
And the Rainbow Coalition is still in effect. Push in Chicago, they're still doing stuff. I still run Reverend Jesse Jackson's. Yeah, I still run their op-ed pieces when they post stuff. I still run it in the inner city newspaper. I mean, the Black press. I will say this. That we've never left the Panthers. Like we've been consistently across this country talking about the Black Panthers as if they were very much present and revolutionary. The Black press across this country has been carrying that torch since the beginning and has not put it down. So, but I love this new recommitment to that story. So how do we teach? How do we talk about the Panthers in today's world? How do we talk about it, when we are seeing so much gun violence, when we are seeing so much still continued police brutality, when Black women are still not protected in this country? I mean, how do we contextualize the Black Panther experience and the Black Panther movement? How do we do that? And Lauren, as an educator, I would imagine you'd have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I also think I hope people will come to the talk tonight, because I do think when I was saying before about entry points, I really appreciate that we're actually reading a book that is technically a YA book, right? It's for young adults. It
does not feel that way to me, but
no,
okay.
I feel like it's very easy to read. Everything is just,
it's really readable. It's also got it's got document content. It has image content. It's beautiful. It has these interactive component pieces. And I do think the book itself puts the Panthers in a longer history of struggle for self-determination, right? And then it also kind of scopes out to the more contemporary present to make the point that what the Panthers were really fighting for, and were largely and most impacted by infiltration, right? And active work on the part of the FBI to undo them. Unsuccessful ultimately, but also in many ways toxic, right, to the party itself, is that all of that organizing, all of those issues, that 10-point plan, it's still as relevant today as it ever was. And so in terms of how do we teach about it, I think one of the things we have to do is we have to make sure people know more. It's very hard. You don't need to ever, as a teacher, I always say to teachers, it's impossible. You don't need to know everything. You need to do your best to know as much as you can, but you also need to position yourself as a learner alongside students who know a great deal of a tremendous value that you don't know. And so and to allow yourself to be schooled and educated by folks who are both your elders and who are younger than you. And so I think that's part of it. I also think that it's, there's a wonderful woman in Connecticut. Her name is Shimei Morales Jones. She runs a Black and Brown homeschooling co-op called My Reflection Matters. She co-authored a book for young children called The ABCs of the Black Panther Party. And I think that the idea that we start teaching about history deeply in high school is really problematic. We actually need to start teaching very young children. And it's one of the things I love about the bookstore, right? Is that kids come in here and they see in the visual culture of the place, histories that don't necessarily get touched by classroom practice. And I do think, some of the how of it is really inviting young children into conversation about history and about historical figures. Why don't young children get to learn about who Fred Hampton was? And I think that some of the things we just didn't mention, and I'll give a quick shout out to, are Nzima Hutchins of Hartford's Lit is going to be doing some poetry workshops for us that are really an offering to young people to engage in creative expression about what they learn from things like their engagement with revolution in our time, and the content of something like Nyzae's Fred Hampton 101, which we hope won't just be the only thing that happens, but will spin off into other conversations and experiences around whether it's like speeches he gave or, just getting young folks engaged more with actual historical content and allowing them the space and the resources to respond expressively and artistically to that. And so just an example is like one of the easiest ways for young folks to feel like they can write poetry sometimes is to do blackout poems, where essentially you give them documents and they create poetry, not by generating the words themselves, but by blacking out words to create poems from like inside of a text. And so you could imagine having kids read a Fred Hampton speech and then inviting them to black out parts of it to create out of that speech a poem that somehow communicates their response to that. And I think those sorts of opportunities that just allow people of like different ages, backgrounds, knowledge levels to participate are really important. And that we ultimately all learn from those experiences. We learn different things, but the things that we learn contribute to the collective conversation.
I like that. So Nyzae, I mean, you and your presence and the way that you think make me very hopeful for the future. Because I'm on the other side of this revolutionary life, and and I like knowing that it'll be young sisters like you out there taking this message and this information and raising this awareness. What does this mean to you though, as a young sister?
Well, every time I do see young people come to the book club or buying books, it's just like a beacon of light and a beacon of hope to see that there are still interests in books and critical thinking, and it shows that the work is far from finished. And I think a lot of people recognize that and are willing to put in the work to implement change, or at least fight to see changes made. So it gives me a lot of hope. And I'm just hopeful that, more people will come, reach out for the Fred Hampton project. And, it sparks interest and collaboration. And hopefully, we'll just keep the ball rolling.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. All right, Lauren, you get the last word. Talk to me about libraries and why they're important. Because I love libraries. So
I'm just saying, my essential workers here. This is how a small business survives. Right? Our beloved UPS folks getting us our boxes early in the day. We, thank you. And I feel like it's a good segue, Babz, to library folks too. I mean, you asked earlier about library. I think libraries are super crucial, and they kind of always have been. We tend to think, I think the cultural image of a librarian, and I hope nobody is going to come for me on saying this, I think I'm speaking some truth, is like an older, nice white lady with glasses and a cardigan. And nothing could be further from the truth. Librarians really are the keepers of knowledge and also democracy. Like when the Patriot Act was like put on the table and people were actually talking after 9/11 about surveilling the stuff that folks actually read and liked.
Yeah.
It was librarians who just would not stand for it. And I do feel like even now they're doing so much with so few resources. Our amazing New Haven Free Public Library System has a tremendous 5-branch Black History Month set of programs. So we know that the Stetson branch is always anchoring like the work of Black history, resource distribution and kind of knowledge gathering, and also just like a celebration of culture. But it's also that like librarians across the system are working hard to create opportunities for people to access resources, to get good programming. All of the books that, are here in the bookstore, you can request from the library. The library is still a place you can and should go. And when push comes to shove and like budget season is upon us, nothing in so many ways, like funding our schools and funding our libraries matters as much as anything else. They are, none of them are perfect institutions, but they're critical. And really, like, if you looked at the library salaries, you'd be horrified given the range of things that librarians are offering to community in New Haven. And so I just want to thank librarians for doing this often under-celebrated and certainly undercompensated work to make sure that, resources are available to our young folks and families and residents in the city. And I want to say not just in the city, because when Pride happened on the Green in New Haven, there were people who came down to the Green and said, I've come here from X part of the state to go to the New Haven Free Public Library because it has queer books on the shelf that I cannot get in my own small town or in the city where I live because of the politics of that space. And so we just need to stand behind our libraries as book sanctuaries that, make sure that books that are getting targeted and banned elsewhere in the country are not subject to that here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So if y'all have presence of mind, those who are listening and those who will listen later, there is a virtual discussion tonight at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7 and Revolution in Our Time. Harry probably will. Harry, can you post up the sign again? Revolution in Our Time, teaching and learning about the Black Panther Party. It begins there, and then I hope you will come to the book club, Radical Thinking Book Club, and I hope that you will gather with us around the Fred Hampton project. I'm very proud of this work, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. So thank y'all for coming on this morning and being my guest and talking about such a. And I hope that as we move forward through the next months and weeks and months, that y'all come back on again as we move through each part of this movement that we're building around the elevation of the Panthers and Fred Hampton and all of that. So thank y'all for your time this morning.
Thanks for letting us
Y'all are,
come out.
yeah, it looks great. It looks great. So thank you. Thank you, Harry, for another great day. Thank you, Paul Bass. And I'll be back tomorrow with another guest.